So there's a saying that's been going around for the past few years in the health world that one bite of sauerkraut has more probiotics than an entire bottle of probiotic supplement. I've said it, I hear lots of people say it. It's based off a study that Dr. Mercola did where he sent his homemade sauerkraut into a lab to be analyzed. And it came back having a ton of bacteria and it blew all the probiotic supplements out of the water because it was so good. But I actually took that information and I compared it to 3 of the top probiotic supplements that I see people using. Now, some of these are in Australia, a lot of them are worldwide. And I just wanted to compare price, the amount you're getting in a bottle and a pill, and then I actually compared it to the homemade sauerkraut. So stick around because I'm gonna go through all 3 of these and comparing it to sauerkraut, who wins, what's the final analysis. And we're not just gonna be doing amount, meaning 10 billion, 20 billion, but we're also gonna be incorporating variety and then other things to consider, including additives that might be hindering your gut healing journey. So the first supplement I looked up is the Metagenics Ultraflora Intensive Care. And this is a brand that you can get in America, you can get in Australia, all over the world. I'm just gonna say real quick, I don't tend to like brands that specialize in every supplement. You know, if I'm going to get Mexican food, I don't wanna go to Applebee's as Mexican, Italian, Asian burgers. I wanna go to a really good, authentic Mexican restaurant. And that is generally how I look at my supplements as well. I have a different distributor for cod liver oil, for my minerals, for my organ meats. Like, I don't go to one person for everything. So I find if a big company is specializing in probiotics, cod liver oil, B vitamins, prenatals, I'm like, there's no way you can be good and make the best of everything. There's just no way. So I stay away from these big companies. But anyway, we'll get into it. So the Metagenics Ultraflora Intensive Care is $103.66. Now this is Australian dollars. And it contains Lactobacillus plantarum. Okay, so it contains 1 strain of probiotics. If you've listened to any of my videos, you know that variety is so important. Just like an ocean, just like a rainforest, you don't want one type of fish swimming in the ocean. You want the plankton, the whales, the sharks, the little fish, the big fish. I'm not a marine biologist, but you know what I'm saying. You want variety because they all work together in the food chain. They support one another for the health of the ocean. Our gut is the same. So to spend $106 on something that contains 1 strain of bacteria, that, by the way, this is something you get, Lactobacillus plantarum is the main probiotic you get in sauerkraut, is not very impressive to me right off the bat. But then let's get into the numbers. Okay, so it's $103.66. It contains 60 pills, and each pill contains 10 billion colony-forming units. Wow, that sounds really impressive. 10 billion, that's a huge number to us because most of us don't have $10 billion, so we feel like, whoa, that's a ton. It's actually not a ton. That means 1 bottle contains 600 billion colony-forming units, and it costs $103 per that. That's actually really not impressive. Okay, so number 2 is Bioceuticals Ultrabiotic. That again is another big company. Not knocking them, but they specialize in every supplement as well, so I don't tend to use them. And their Ultrabiotic 45 is $85.49. So these probiotic bottles are like $100. I mean, that's, if you're getting one of those every month, that is a good chunk of change. And it contains 45 billion colony-forming units per pill. Now, there's 60 pills in the bottle, so you're getting 2.7 trillion colony-forming units of bacteria, beneficial probiotics, in that bottle. So that sounds like, whoa, comparing to 600 billion to 2.7 trillion, that's a lot more. So it's already looking better. Now, this also has 9 strains of different types of bacteria and probiotics. So like I said, variety is important. So now we're moving in the right direction. 9 strains, that's great. It has lactobacillus, it has bifidobacterium, and it has streptococcus. So it's got a bit more variety, and that's gonna be more supportive for your body, generally speaking. Okay, now the third one is the Garden of Life Primal Defense. This is a bit misleading because the bottle says 15 billion colony-forming units per day. But when you actually look at the back, you need 3 pills to get to that 15 billion. So really each pill only contains 5 billion colony-forming units. So I think that's a bit misleading. You don't really love that. But okay, 5 billion times 90, because there's 90 in a bottle, you're getting 450 billion colony-forming units. in that bottle of probiotics, and that's $96. So again, we're getting close to $100 for 450 billion. That's less than the first one, way less than the bioceuticals, but it does have 13 strains. So what we're lacking in amount, and by the way, colony forming units are just like the amount. It's what goes into your body and can duplicate. So it contains 13 strains, so that's definitely more beneficial. You're getting more variety, but we're having the least amount of actual bacteria. And again, it's $100. So it's getting quite crazy to spend that. Okay, so now we're gonna get into our homemade sauerkraut and how does it compare to these other therapeutic probiotic supplements? Is it better? Is it worse? And I'm gonna do my final analysis. So this is where Dr. Mercola, he sent in his homemade sauerkraut. He found that, a bite of his homemade sauerkraut had more colony forming units than, all these other brands, which is great. But is it true? So let's get into it. So I found that in his study where he got his sauerkraut analyzed, 4 to 6 ounces, which is 10 tablespoons. So 5 ounces is 10 tablespoons. So I just kind of took the median. So 10 tablespoons had about 10 trillion colony forming units. 10 trillion. Okay, so 10 tablespoons, which is a fair bit, had 10 trillion. That means 1 tablespoon had 1 trillion. So right off the bat, he's right. The best bottle had 2.7 trillion in a bottle. Now 1 tablespoon has 1 trillion. So you only really need 3 tablespoons in order to get to the amount that that whole bottle has. So if we're comparing costs, that's pretty crazy because I don't know if you've ever made sauerkraut, but it's literally 1 head of cabbage and salt. So you can make like jars for like $5. You could probably get 5 jars for $5, like meaning $1 a jar. So to have a couple tablespoons of that is, pennies, like maybe 25 cents compared to $85 for that. So it wins in the total colony forming units, the amount, but variety, it doesn't necessarily win. So the homemade sauerkraut, there's around 3 strains in homemade sauerkraut, and it's primarily Lactobacillus plantarum, which is the one that the Metagenics had. So when we compare it, it doesn't have a ton of variety. The Garden of Life Primal Defense has more, and the bioceuticals had more. They have different strains, they have more variety. Okay, so for my final analysis, is homemade sauerkraut better? I would say 100% yes. If a jar of homemade sauerkraut is about $1 and 3 tablespoons gets you to the amount of the best supplement, the cost is a huge difference. I mean, you could have 3 tablespoons of a meal 3 times a day, and you're blowing the other ones out of the water in the amount of colony forming units. They don't have as many of the different variety strains. So in that way, I kind of feel like it's misleading because variety is important. But I'm gonna do another video next on comparing milk kefir to other probiotic supplements. And you'll pretty quickly see it's not hard to get that variety that these offer by just including a couple other fermented foods or even 1 other fermented food in your diet. You already have more than the 13 strains. So if you just rely on homemade sauerkraut, you're gonna be getting a ton more, but you might wanna get maybe a pill for that variety, but I would really encourage you to just add in another fermented food because then you'll be getting a ton of that variety. And it's something you can make at home. It's not gonna have additives, where a lot of these have additives that are actually harmful to your gut. You're gonna save a ton of money, and it's just so easy to get them into your diet. And by the way, this is why I say 1 drop of sauerkraut juice actually does a ton for your health. People don't believe me. They say, oh, I can't do GAPS because I can't handle sauerkraut juice. I'm like, start with 1 drop. Oh, what can a drop do? A ton, Actually so much. It has so much of that lactobacillus that you're gonna be paying hundreds of dollars for these other brands. So definitely, I hope this encourages you to go make some sauerkraut, enjoy it with every meal. Start slow, start with a drop, work your way up, and you will have a great, healthy gut, and you will not be scammed into spending tons of money on dumb supplements that you don't need.